You are watching Co-op for Two, broadcasting live from Champaign, Illinois, Sunday afternoon, about 3 p.m. Central Standard Time, January 29th, 2023. You're joining me for turn 6 of The Blinded Birder. This is a play-by-mail game made by a company called MurdersByMail.com. This is their third case. We're on turn 6, which means if you are just joining this stream and haven't watched the first 5 turns, you should stop and exit now. It makes no sense to come in now. Their sessions are about an hour each. We try to play every week on Sundays, but if the mail doesn't arrive in time, sometimes there are 2-week gaps, which is what we have now. But anyway, go back and catch up, and you can catch us on the next live stream. I don't normally say this, but if you enjoy this content, you might consider clicking that thumbs up button, subscribing to the channel, or better yet, post a comment on the videos sharing your thoughts about the game. It just makes it more enjoyable for me when I see that stuff. Not necessary though, just an idea. All right, so I've got our reply here, but let's catch up a little bit before we get started. Some bookkeeping. Next week, we will be playing another Deadbolt Mystery Society game, although it's not clear which game. I think we're going to play The Dark and Stormy Night, which is a highly ranked game, and I'm hoping I'll soon start doing batches of reviews of the Deadbolt Mystery Society games, like sort of review 5 boxes in one short video. Because I've been so pleasantly surprised by that company and their games, it would be nice to start getting out some spoiler-free reviews of those so people can discover this company and their games. What else should we talk about? I do want to talk a little bit about the experience we just had Friday and Saturday, my late night group. We've got sort of the Sunday afternoon, hour-long session group here for these sessions. And then we've got the sort of hardcore 6-hour session at 11 p.m., at least 11 p.m. US time, of the longer games. And on Friday and Saturday, we played a fan-made case called The Curse for Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective, which shares something in common with this format. And this is the third case made by a fellow named Martinez Conradi from South Africa. And they have been some of the highest quality fan-made cases for Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective that we've played. One of them, The Anniversary, is one of my favorites. And we had a very interesting experience this weekend playing it. Because the intention was to play it and finish it on Friday. And sometimes we'll go 7.5 hours on a stream to finish it up. And after about 6 hours of playing it, I think for various reasons, we were getting a little tired. But it also felt like it was a good case. The writing is very good. But it wasn't quite clicking. And, you know, we were sort of on the fence between, should we just stick it out for another half hour and solve it and answer the questions? Or should we sleep on it and think about it and come back and play it the next day? And an interesting thing happened, which is when we came back overnight, having had time to chew on some of the pieces of the game and the mystery, the deduction, we actually spent like an hour recapping it and then an hour talking about theories and then another hour just chasing down some last leads, but mostly debating theories. By the time we got to the end, we had played an extra 4 hours, mostly just talking through theories of the case, and it ended up being an extremely compelling experience for me inside it, trying to solve it. I don't know you know, it's very possible that from the outside it looked like we were just drawing this thing out for hours unnecessarily. But I think we learned an interesting lesson, or relearned a lesson, that you'd be well advised to think about when you play any of these games, which is that you get out what you put into them. And if you rush towards the end and you say, whatever, I don't really care, let me just guess at the answer, it's very possible that you're not going to have that much fun. And if you sort of instead say, well, let's take this seriously. Let's play this game as if there were real people involved whose lives really depended on us to solve the case. And let's take seriously the idea that there's a puzzle here to figure out. You might find out that your investment of time is not warranted, but you might find out that you can make your own enjoyment and that you really will get something out of it. There's some value in just going through the process of treating a case seriously. All right, so let's catch up on our blinded murder case. Since it's been 2 weeks since we played. Well, first let me ask the chat. Let's check in. Anyone up to anything interesting? Anyone have any interesting projects they're working on? Any creative projects? Anyone do anything interesting this weekend? Read anything interesting? Watch any interesting movies? What you got? The delay on YouTube makes it, this is why I don't normally ask, I normally just play these games with some feedback from the channel, but I hesitate to do the question and answer. It's unfortunate that YouTube has such a delay that it's impractical. So one other thing, while I'm waiting for you guys to tell me what you're up to, I did see on the board game Reddit, someone posted about an exit, a new, not exit the brand game, but a new exit room style, an escape room style board game. And there are a lot of these, and I tend not to, they're a very similar genre to what I focus on, but I tend not to play them because they seem to be very typically about puzzles where you manipulate stuff, and I just don't love that stuff too much. But I saw that someone posted about a new one that intrigued me. First of all, it's sold as a sort of longer game, which I like. And there were some interesting, unique things about it. So I ordered it. I just ordered it. And if this looks interesting to you, you might order it. You'll have it in time to play it along with us, if that matters. But let me just show you what it is. It's called Curse of the Dark. And what I wanted to show you was some of the pictures. So there's, whoa, what happened? That's not the page we were on. Let's go here until I get this. Something weird happened. I needed that page because I want you to see the pictures on that page, and the other pages don't have good pictures. Well, we could settle for that one. Here it is, I think. Okay, sorry, I don't know what happened there. All right, so let's see. Is there something wrong with it zooming in? Okay, so there it is in the box. It's in 2 parts. It's got some narrative and puzzles and a deck of cards. I like those when they've got nice deck of cards. Oh, come on, guys. Okay, so, but I want to show you a picture of there. Let's look at that picture. So what's unique about this one, apparently, is while you're solving this puzzle, you're building this map of this place. It's got some gimmicky little 3D stuff. I don't care for any of that. But the idea of building this map of tiles, apparently a pretty big map when it gets built, as you're solving these puzzles, you're building this map to understand this place so that you can escape it. That seems very intriguing to me. And it's got some stuff where you scratch off to see if you're right or something. So, you know, this is your standard escape room style stuff that I don't care about. But the idea of stringing it together in a narrative that has you building a map of a place, and it looks like you might be doing some physical puzzles on the map, like to figure out where a safe way is, that does appeal to me. And I like that there's this narrative. It reminds me a little bit of the Escape Tales games and the adventure games. Adventure games? What are they called? Escape Tales, and the other one is adventure games. Yeah. They both have this puzzle escape room, but it's structured as a kind of spatial map. And so that appeals to me. Okay. So if that appeals to you, you might order it. I think it was $28 on Amazon. So fairly reasonable. Matt says, started watching season 4 of Fargo. Fargo was a great TV series. I'm trying to remember. Fargo was an amazing movie, Coen Brothers movie. And then they made it into a series that each season is standalone. It doesn't continue, which was a brilliant idea. And the series are all quite good. Now, but I'm trying to remember if I've seen season 4. I know I've seen at least the first 3. I can't remember if I've seen the 4th season, though. But they're really quite good. All right. Blinded Birder. Let's do our recap here. The case is a murder, we believe, of a guy named Rupert Albright. We're contacted by our friend Cecily. She writes us this letter. She draws us some maps of this guy who got killed in the park right here near Heller Hole in Bockerley. And the police think he was shot by a poacher, someone just out hunting illegally, while he was birding. And Cecily writes to us and shows us why that's so ridiculous. She says, if this guy was birding, he's looking up, but the evidence shows he was shot right through his binoculars. That means he must have been looking at the person who shot him, says she. We were thinking maybe he was looking up in the sky and shot by something above, because there seems to be some clues here about the Air Force Base conducting some interesting secretive stuff, and then there's an archaeological dig. And over the course of our last 5 turns, we've discovered some interesting information. Rupert Albright had money trouble. Sorry, let me put this back. Rupert Albright had recently come into some money trouble. He seems to be involved in some illegality involving possibly auctioning off either rare archaeological items. He sold a piece of pottery that he shouldn't have had. Possibly, we heard him arguing with a woman in a tea cafe, telling her, just do your job and do the auction, and I'll worry about the rest. And so there's that. And then in the newspaper, he was spotted doing his birding activities unusually. So there's these 3 dog walkers. We visited one of them who said they saw him with a device, an electronics device, where he was listening, almost like he had a metal detector, but maybe he was just listening for sounds, right near the archaeological dig. So we think maybe he's discovering these things, although we also think he might be listening for maybe some aircraft war. This whole case is set in the 40s. So it's World War II period. So it's possible that he's a spy listening for that. And then We also think that perhaps because of the scene of his death, looks like he could have been spying on someone in Borley Wood. So maybe he was doing that. And we know that we finally chased down a girl that was keen on him, who said that he told her he wasn't into birding anymore, so why should they be friends? So there's weird things going on about him. And a couple people have told us very recently that he wasn't a very nice guy. And Tina says, no, not 40s, 50s. Let's remind ourselves. Okay, so Antina is right. It's first week of May, 1955. Okay, a little bit past World War II then. All right. So, where did we go on our last turn? On our last turn, which we've got the reply to, we went to the second person we were told was his good friend and used to go birding with. That's Paul Ridge, a friend who lives in Lickenford, where the girl that liked him was. These are two people he met at Abel's hunt birding shop or something. So Cecily was already down there speaking to the woman who was fancied him, so now we're going to talk to his other friend. Imogen, the dog person who's got Wooster the dog, well, we sent her to the Squire Stones out here by the archaeological dig. Let's take a look at that for a second. So this is where the dog walkers saw him. The dog walkers, according to the news, also, this is where the dog walkers live, down here a bit. E43, that's where we just were. And he told us that he saw him while they were walking their dogs here. These dog walkers we discovered from the paper, the paper also mentions that they saw this ghost, whatever it is. That's how they thought. They thought, well, maybe it's the ghost of that guy who died. But I do want to point out something about our decision here. So we've been debating about whether to go to directly to the archaeological site, to the visitor center there, or to the Squire Stones, which the dog walkers mention. And I want us to re-look at that previous reply where they mentioned the Squire Stones, because I think we sort of missed something here. So I want to look at that again. But then the third place we went, which we were quite proud to think of, was we went to an electronics store that we found in the directory. Right there, DJ Clark Radio Supplies, radios, electronics, televisions. I think there may have also been an ad in the paper for them. But anyway, that feels like we might get a clue about Rupert Albright buying this device that these dog walkers saw him using. So this could be a big clue. They might tell us, hey, it's a metal detector, or hey, it's a thing for listening to airplanes. And actually, that's another reason I want us to reread that clue to see if there's something to pick up there. And then there was something else to point out. Someone, I think it may have been Antina, pointed out that we've been looking for this woman that he was seen in the tea shop arguing with, telling her to do this illegal criminal auction thing, we think. And I believe we know her first name is Caroline or Catherine. He mentioned one of the tea shop person heard them speaking. So let's see, what was the name of that person who overheard at the tea shop? They heard him say, the auction's not your problem, Kathleen, it's mine. You just do what you're told. So we've been trying to find Kathleen. We traced her down and we know she's a singer at the church choir. But then we lost track of her. We spoke to the Sopranos, whatever. And someone in the channel at the end of the last meeting, I believe it was Antina, or it could have been Nicola. It was either Nicola or Antina, I believe, said, there's a choral society in the directory. And that feels like a very subtle, clever idea. And I did not find it when I took my first glance through it. And one of the people in the chat did. Nicola or Megan, says Antina. Okay, so I think that should be high on our priority of going to, because if we can find Kathleen and get a clue about what illegal stuff he was up to, that would be a big deal. I think it must be under clubs. It's not under entertainment. Where is it? See, now I can't even find it. This shows you why I didn't find it the first time. Entertainment, no. There's like some club listing, but why isn't it so obvious? Social clubs, there it is. It's called social clubs. And under social club is Egwine's Choral Society. Okay, so I've made a note in our notes about that so we won't forget it. For this game, unlike normal Sherlock Holmes, maybe it was Debbie. The chat channel is everyone's disavowing being the one who came up with the brilliant idea. So maybe the person who came up with that idea wasn't there. And I'm reminded here by ME that 1950s is after World War II, but Cold War. So lots of spying going on here. Okay. What was I saying? Oh, note-taking in these play-by-mail games is actually one of the joys of these games, in that everything you read, you've got the letter for that you can mark up and write on. And so it's very easy to refresh your memory. Unlike Sherlock Holmes consulting detective paragraph reading books, where you have to take good notes because it's very hard to quickly catch up and remind yourself what you've read. Here, these things are very easy to review. So I tend not to take as many notes for these games, but one good thing to take notes on are places you want to go that aren't on the letters. So when we do the letters, I try to annotate them. If someone's mentioned, we can write them down. But if we thought of something from the directory that's not in a letter, that's a good thing for a note. Okay, so before we read our replies, I do want to look at that last reply from the dog walker that I think we may have skimmed through too quickly. Okay, so here it is. It was Imogen, and it was very smart to send her because she's got her own dog, so the dog walker took to her right away. And I do want to look at this. So we're following up from the newspaper article, and we're like, yeah, you saw Albright. Now, when we read this, I think we skimmed through, and he said, at the end, he said, the ghost, and he said, we saw the ghost near the old Squire Stones. And I think we somehow mixed that in with where Albright was sniffing around. And that's why we went to the Squire Stones. It's related to the archaeological dig. It's right next to it. It's the Squire Stones. But in fact, that's where they saw the ghost. That's not where they would run into Albright. Albright, he says up top. He says, I'd say it is, and say that Albright was among the graves a few times early in the morning. So he's actually not by the Squire Stones. He's in the cemetery. So we may need to go on the next turn properly to where Albright was. If that's what we're looking for signs of Albright, he's here, not necessarily here. This might be our ghost side story, or maybe we'll catch word of Albright. But if we wanted Albright, we should have gone here. I'm not sure. We just got so attracted. We were so curious about these archaeological dig that we went here and we skipped here. But let's not forget to go here, yeah? And then the second part was I wanted to I am continued to be intrigued by the idea that part of this case has to do with the RAF field. And I do want to point out something, that when they question him about what he's listening to, one of the girls asked him if he was listening to the birds with it. And he says back to her, yeah, something like that. Bit rude about it, to be honest. Certainly a strange lad. When I reread that, I thought, he says something like that. Is that a reference to the birds, the planes? Is that why he's saying something like that? Like, she says, are you listening to the birds? Is he like making the allusion to the airplane, nickname for airplanes being birds, and being, yeah, something like that, I'm listening to the birds? Or am I reading too much into that? Okay, let's read our replies. So, recap where we sent people. Cecily went to Paul Ridge, the other friend who's off the map in Wickenford. Imogen went to the Squire Stones with Wooster, who's good at sniffing out clues. We hope he'll spot something in the ground. And the vicar, he went to the electronics store. We figured we try to send the vicar where he can do the least harm, and he's sort of the comedic relief. So it's kind of funny, the idea of sending him where he might not fit in. And we're told that he's a little bit naive. Just to remind you, each of these people have different skills, so we try to plan sending them to the right place. And the vicar's main skills are negative. They're negative skills, although people tend to trust him and tell him things maybe that they wouldn't tell someone else. All right, here's Cecily, who has not gotten my memo about typing up her replies. So I have to read her cursive with some effort. She says, Dearest Jessie, let me zoom in as much as I can, but it's still probably not readable from the screen. I try to read from the screen as much as I can using a plugin that I wrote that lets me look off screen so it doesn't look weird for you. The audio is better if I'm looking forward, but when I try this, I can't read her writing well enough to do it. Yes, okay. Dearest Jessie, hello, I'm Paul, said Mr. Ridge when he arrived at my door. Mother told me to stop by. She goes to church with you, is that right? Yes, come in, I understand. Wait, who's talking to who? Hello, I'm Paul, said Mr. Ridge. Okay. Oh, he comes by to us? Mother told me to stop by. Okay, so we say, yes, come in. I understand you are friends with Rupert Albright. Paul came inside, sat down, and pushed his glasses up his bony face. Well, Rupert and I were more friendly than friends. He was hard to get close to, but we were both avid about bird watching, so for years we'd see each other at Abel's, meet up for tours, that sort of thing. He cocked his head as if listening, then sighed. Rupert's specialty was birdsong. He could hear a few notes and tell you exactly what species it was. He'd close his eyes and listen, get this far-off look, and whisper that it was like hearing the music of God. Fascinating, I said. When was the last time you saw him? Well, about 6 weeks ago, he said. Rupert stopped coming to Abel's, you see. Stopped birding completely, from what I could tell. He finally birded himself out, I suppose. He had a new obsession, you see. I cleared my throat. A lady friend, perhaps? Paul snorted. Hardly. That's... Hardly. That it was bats. Bats, Mom. Bats, I asked. As in the flying rodents? The same. The last time I ran into Rupert, it was all he'd talk about. Bats this and bats that. He'd apparently read some magazine article on the secret music of bats. This is radar, is what's going on here. Sonar, right? Bouncing sound waves off. Sonar. This is what the RAF could be doing with their planes too. Okay. He learned that scientists have these pricey microphone setups that let them listen to bat calls, which are much too high for humans to hear. Yeah, Rupert said he'd been busy scouting out local caves and reading up on radio equipment, going down to Clark's to research transistors and such. He wanted to build himself one of those costly gadgets so he could listen to the chorus of the night. That's how he said it. Chorus of the night. It all sounded a little, batty, I suggest. Paul laughed politely at my joke. I was gonna say expensive. Rupert wasn't exactly rolling in it, Mom. If this toy was as pricey as he was putting on, I couldn't see how someone like Rupert could possibly afford it. All right, well, I mean, we had already figured out to go to Clark's, so this sort of gave up that information that we didn't need. But here we go. He is listening to bat calls, but we suspect it might be a little more than that, right? This could be some sonar spying. And then we're also given a time frame, 6 weeks ago. So 6 weeks ago, he starts talking about wanting to listen to bats. And then this guy reminds us he didn't have money for this stuff. I couldn't see how someone like Rupert could possibly afford it. Okay. Chat says, anywhere we could go to see if there really are bats in the area. Interesting. Let's look at our map and see if there are some caves. Well, I mean, we know he's seen near the cemetery. Not much bat activity you wouldn't really expect in an open plains, but there is this ruins of a castle that are mentioned in the paper. You might expect to see bats in a castle ruins, right? I know that castle is mentioned in the paper somewhere. Not sure where, though. Yes, it's mentioned in the story about the box that was found. That's a little side case. The box with a newspaper. Well, look over here. Look what I notice over here. Hanger Draw. That looks like a cave there. E20. But I'm not sure. Hanger Dip, Hanger Draw. I'm not sure what we would do there other than to go in there and see if anyone has seen Rupert hanging out near the cave. It doesn't seem like that would give us too much direct evidence. I think we should just follow his trail. But it is an interesting thing. And again, the 6 weeks does seem significant. Like something happened in his life in 6 weeks. He was approached by someone, maybe because of his skill at identifying birdsong timings, makes him a good candidate to listen for sonar bursts and detect maybe the model of airplane from the sonar sounds, something like that. Like maybe a skill at detecting and recognizing bird songs would be useful for, like if you ever see the old movies, submarine war movies, there's always a submarine operator, right? And those submarine operators would be trained to recognize enemy subs by the sounds they made. right? They would have their books. And I don't know exactly what the sound would look like, or there would be a visual display of a sound too, an oscilloscope or something. And they would recognize what class of submarine it was based on the sonar reflection patterns. So maybe that's what we're dealing with. ME points out a good point that we don't know the answer to, which is that he seems to have this wide spread. He's shot here, and here he is hanging out with his radar equipment. That's a weird thing. But it would make sense if his contact, his spy contact, is over here by the RAF base, that he got called to have a meeting here, and his actual activity work is here. The real question, though, is what is he listening for here? Like, is he spying for the Royal Air Force and listening for planes coming from this direction? We don't know. Jan says, each submarine detection requires training. He would be a good candidate for such, but no sign of him attending one. It's true, and there's no water here, so he's not actually listening for submarines. So I don't know. Let us read our next reply. All right, here's Imogen, who has better handwriting that I can read a little bit better normally. She's been to her finishing school where they trained her to write a little more clearly. She's at the Squire Stones, which I kind of regret not sending her to the cemetery, but we were going to go here eventually anyway. Dear Jessie, the Squire Stones are a stand of ancient monoliths that ring the western edge of Danham Hill. Danham Hill is our local archaeological wonder, a Bronze Age fort that's been under constant study since the turn of the century. The Squire Stones are our little Stonehenge. Bakerlee's claim to modest fame. No one knows for sure what they were for, but stories of witches and ghosts are common embellishments on any number of theories. The stones themselves are on a small rise behind Marden Cemetery. Wooster and I approached from there, climbing carefully up a steep hill. Before us, the largest of the squires loomed up, tons of rock amid a scrabble of low shrub. Wooster sniffed about and quickly found that much of the shrub nearest the stone was missing, as if a gardener had come and shorn the earth close. Around this bare patch was a foot-tall ring of cotton string, stretched between small wooden stakes. A hand-painted sign read, "No entry, please. Active dig beginning soon. For questions, please contact the Visitor Center, Darham Hill Archaeological Society." I called Wooster out of the restricted area, then looked around more. Past the stones to the east, I could see the bustling main dig site of the larger Danham Hill, where numerous young people with shovels and brushes went about their work. Few of them looked my way with curiosity. I smiled and waved. They waved in reply and returned to their work. I looked back towards the cemetery, and it occurred to me that if someone were standing down there amidst the graves at night, looking upward through the trees, and if I went behind that no trespassing sign with a lantern or torch, I might very much appear to be floating beyond the cemetery's branches. In other words, the ghost mentioned in the newspaper was probably someone visiting the Squire Stones before dawn, clandestinely. But why? I could see nothing around the stones beyond preparations for their upcoming dig. far as I'd heard, the only things being dug up from the old earth around Bockerley were ancient pots and rusty plowshares. All right, so she's she's explaining what the ghost was. The ghost is someone at these Squire Stones where we are. She's imagining looking up from the cemetery where the dog walkers are and saying that because it's up on this ridge, you might appear as if you're floating beyond the cemetery's branches. So the ghost is that they saw while walking their dog early in the morning is really someone where they shouldn't be, poking around the Squire Stones right in this area where there's a sign saying, "Don't come in here, we're about to do a dig here." So it's a ring of cotton string stretched between small wooden stakes. So there's nothing mysterious about that. Someone has cordoned off an area and says, "Don't enter, dig soon." And this is an official area because it's saying for questions, contact the visitor center. So this is probably, is it that someone is waiting for the dig to identify a place they want to dig, and then they're sneaking up there to steal out the stuff? But then the question is, this is not, Rupert Albright is not the person who's sniffing around with a lantern at the dig site. Someone else is doing that. And Rupert is in the cemetery where you might look up and see this. And let's remember, there's no hint that these are happening at the same time, right? The dog walkers say they frequently saw Albright in the cemetery with his device, and then separately they say one day after he died, they saw someone up by these Squire Stones. So those are not necessarily connected events. Although we don't know why Albright was in the cemetery. And Tina says the ghost they thought was a woman. Yes, one of them thought that the ghost, or one or more of them thought that the ghost was a woman. So would it be someone else? But Tina says maybe Kathleen dug up the pottery. But don't forget, they saw the ghost after he died. That's what the newspaper says. So this would have been after he died. Let's see. They witnessed dancing lights, ghostly form of a person. It came out of the old Squires. And then Vicnair, the guy we talked to, said his theory was the identity of the ghost. He says, I don't think it was a woman. Wasn't dressed like a woman. That was plain. I wonder if it was the soul of the Albright fellow, what died in the woods. We sometimes did see him on our early walks amidst the graves. So yeah, this, whoever was out here was doing this after, I mean, at least they saw him after Albright died. Okay. Well, a reason to go to the visitor center, but no clue about Albright. All right. Let's read the vicar at the electronics store, which we kind of already got a different clue that told us we were on the right track, but let's see if we can gain any extra information from this. Vicar's report, Obsessions and Giggles. It's called a heterodyne, and you use it to listen to bats. Listen to bats. He's spelling this word. Said DJ Clark after I'd explained to him about Albright. It uses a microphone to gather round sound in a high frequency range and convert it to a lower frequency. You listen with headphones. Nicer ones can record things on tape too. Scientists use them to translate all the clicks and shrieks and warbles that bats make into something audible to the human ear. Clark pushed his thick glasses up his nose. Yeah, a month or two ago, Rupert came in just gushing on about heterodynes. He wanted to know exactly how they worked and how he could build one. I did my best to help, but it's like his mind was on fire. He went to the library and checked out every book they had on electronics and radios. Then he'd bring them in here and ask me questions to clarify things. He built not one, but two of the things in as many weeks. Got one working, then decided it wasn't good enough for his needs. He spent a fortune on special parts he'd have me order. How much did he spend? Well, first one he built on the cheap. He said he couldn't afford new components, so he went down to Hoffman's and scrounged parts from old radios. I remember how excited he was when he finally got it working. He said he'd found the perfect cave nearby for his first test. Came in next morning just beaming. Hear anything good, I asked? He giggled and said, yeah, and I saw something interesting too. Clark shook his head. Week later, he came in and ordered the parts for his second heterodyne with all the bells and whistles. This time he paid cash, all up front, even offering extra to have everything curried down from London. No idea where he got the money, but it's not like I was going to argue with a paying customer. All told, he spent close to £100. He made my sale for the month. And the vicar says what we're thinking. Hey, was his interest really bats, I asked? Are these gadgets useful for anything else? Clark considered. Well, there's no doubt in my mind that bats were his obsession. He talked endlessly about them. The kind he built was exactly specialized for that. Apparently that cave he found has baby bats in it. And he went on and on about how they chirped and sang, a music never heard by the human ear. He said, sounded like a man who found heaven or something. I was kind of jealous, to be honest, that is, until he turned up dead. Well, that's interesting. I mean, he's making the case that this is really about bats. He says, specialized for bats. He's all excited about it. Music never heard by the human ear. Sounded like a man who'd found heaven. But then he said he saw something too. Hear anything good? He giggled and said, yes, and I saw something interesting too. And then there's the cave mention, which is interesting because we discussed it previously and wondered if that... Okay, I see another cave too, actually. So look, there's the cave that I saw before, here. But look, there's another one there too. So, two caves here, one here and one here. And apparently so it sounded like, I think if you wanted to put together our guess here, he had no money, he had an idea. He says his mind was on fire, so he came up with some brilliant idea how he could use bats to find artifacts from the dig or something. So he rushes in there, his mind's on fire, he's going crazy, he learns everything, he builds it himself. this heterodyne, and he takes it out. He builds this cheap one. He takes it out, and it did let him find something. And that's the pottery. This is my hypothesis. He found the pottery and sold it at the auction, made enough money to go buy a better one to go for more. So I wonder if the bats are somehow helping him locate something in these caves. And Tina says, how did he get the money? I think we know that because we found he was at the auction site, remember, and the person didn't even want to tell us. A few weeks ago, he came in with a piece of pottery, an artifact of the early Iron Age. He wanted to auction it anonymously, which we did, and the funds were purchased by someone directly to his bank. So we could actually visit his bank to see how much he made on that piece of pottery. But I believe that's how I would put together, that would be my best bet for this picture, that he built the first one on the cheap. It helped him discover this artifact, which he auctioned, sold, made money, bought the upgraded one, and has gone back out. Now, can we trace that timeline? A few weeks ago, he sold the pottery. And when does this person tell us the upgraded item cost? Let's see. A month or two ago, he came in to build his first one. A month or two. First heterodyne that he does on the cheap with his own money. Okay, he builds it. He built not one, but two of the things in as many weeks. So 2 weeks later, he builds his second one. A month or two ago, so that could be 8 weeks ago, he builds his first one. And then 6 weeks ago, he has money to build his second one. A few weeks ago, he sold the pottery. I think it still can line up. It sounds like he had some money 6 weeks ago, though. Or, well, this could be a month or two ago. So if this was 1 month ago, then it would be 4 weeks ago he built the first one, and then 2 weeks ago he had money, which would line up with when he got the money from the auction. So I think that's what we're looking at. But how would you find artifacts by listening to bats? That is the question. Jan says, bats for finding artifacts. More sense to me as he found items while listening for bats as a side effect. No, that doesn't make sense to me because he came back and he's like, I got to build a better one now. So obviously this device is leading him to find the artifacts. Unless he really just cares about bats. But he took his money from finding the first artifact to build a better one. So it's clear that this thing that he's building to listen to the bats is where he wants to spend his money. And if he got his money from the artifact, it seems to me, yeah, because look at the picture that's being painted. He's a birder, right? And then all of a sudden, a couple months ago, he's completely dropped the birds and he's totally infatuated with listening to bats. So somewhere he's gotten an idea that the bats will help him find this stuff. This is not an organic interest in bats. It's too sudden and too all-encompassing of his interests. He's just suddenly, out of money and realizes that he's obsessed with being able to hear the bats. And we know he can recognize the sounds of birds very well. That skill, maybe that's letting him listen to bats so that he can figure out where they're going, or something that's letting him find these artifacts. I agree. I don't know how, but this is sort of like, it feels like we might have been on the wrong trail. We were so obsessed with the idea that this is Cold War England that he was doing spying, but it feels to me that he's really doing a little bit of treasure hunting here, and he's figured out a way by listening to bats to find treasures. And I think the thing for us to do is find those caves. But now, why was he in the cemetery with that device? Why was he in the cemetery with that device? Is it that he's using this to figure out where the bats' caves are? Because he knows that's where artifacts were kept? How's that for a theory? Here's the theory. The theory is that these ancient Iron Age artifacts are stored in caves. But people don't know where these small little caves are. Like maybe small rooms on the side of a hill that's a cave. And so by figuring out where the bats live and roost, that will find the cave entrances, which happen to be where artifacts have been stored from the Iron Age. All right, catching up again with the chat here. And Tina says, or we'll start with Emmy's comment here. Maybe he's been seen skulking about at night, was really listening in on a meeting of some kind. Whoever it was wanted him out of the way. Maybe he tried blackmail. That's an idea, but I don't think so. This heterodyne device is not designed to pick up normal audible sounds. The whole point of this device is to convert high-pitched sounds to low-pitched sounds so that they can be audible by the human ear. This would make it harder to overhear people talking. So I don't think it's that. It's a good idea, though. And Tina says, how do you get the money? Extortion? I don't think so. I think he's just selling these artifacts at the auction. That was his idea. Now, he may have tried to sell it to someone on the wrong side, or stumbled in the wrong place and stumbled on something he shouldn't that got him killed. I don't have any insight into what got him killed at the time, or what he was doing at Heller Hole, although maybe he was looking for bats there. Jen says, bats for finding artifacts. Makes more sense that he found item while listening for bats as a side effect in the cave visited. I guess my tweak on that is what Jan says on the next statement. Maybe he can find the sub-caves that bats live in, like old graves and caves. Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking that maybe by finding where the bats live, he's finding cave entrances, like little mini entrances that people would not otherwise be able to find. And Tina says, maybe I heard something from the professors. Okay, that we've talked about that. Rob says, maybe the thing can be used as a metal detector. Ground sonar is a thing. Ground penetrating radar, at least. Yeah, except now we're told that the specific device he built was really for converting high-frequency bat noises into low-frequency human. So I really think this is now about bats. I don't know exactly why cemetery, although I'll point out that if he is trying to track movements of bats to their roosts, that this cave is, right on a solid line, that might give a good view. So maybe he's sitting here trying to find out where the bats swimming around, like from the castle or whatever, like where they roost. Maybe that's what he's following. Okay, so now let's decide where we want to go. I feel like I've got a change in theory. I mean, change in where I want to send him. I think we might hit both of these caves. Although whether we'll be able to find anything in them, I'm not sure. But I'm sort of inclined... I'm still curious about finding Kathleen at the Coral Society. But I think rather than going to the Dig Visitor Center... I mean, the cemetery is still attractive too, since we know he was there. And we might find... Like, what if there's a little mausoleum here that the bats were in? It does seem like we should go to the cemetery where he was hanging out, since we don't understand why he was here. On the other hand, I'm really, really intrigued by these two caves. Let's hear where the chat wants to go. I'm going to use one of my votes to go to one of these caves. I'm inclined to go to the one that's less obvious. So my inclination is to send Imogen and Wooster the dog down here to this little cave in the corner right here. That seems like it's trying to be hidden. But I wouldn't mind going to this cave as well. But maybe we could go to them in turn. If we see signs of him here, we don't need to go here, or vice versa. We might look for other caves too, right? Like those could be the decoy caves. Where does the channel want to go? Who has not gotten a vote in to go to some place that wants to exercise their right to volunteer a place? Nicholas says, let's send Imogen to the bank, Cecily to the Coral Society, and the vicar to the cave. Rob wants to go to the visitor center. Emmy wants to go to the visitor center and the bank. And Tina says, is it too early to go to the RAF base? Jan says the cave and the Coral Society. Wow, a whole bunch of various things. Okay, it is too early to go to the RAF base. We have we've not come across anyone with any ties to the RAF base. So yes, it's too early to go there. Okay, I feel like the vicar, I don't want to... Sending the vicar to the cave concerns me because I'm so hot on that cave and the vicar is the worst person. Although I don't disagree that Imogen is not good at the banks. That is her sort of her specialty. How would Wooster fare in the cave with bats? I'm not sure he's the best person for that, although Imogen and Wooster are my favorite. Our dog growing up, I already told you, his name was Wooster. We lived on Wooster Street, and his full name was the Prince of Wooster Street. So I have an affinity for Wooster, the dog. Our dog was a Dalmatian, though. The thing is, if this picture is being fleshed out a bit more about what he's doing, finding artifacts and selling them, it makes locating Kathleen less compelling. Although we don't know what her role was. We do kind of want to find her. The bank, what are we hoping to get from the bank? The bank will tell us how much money he made on selling the pottery, and possibly, in the best of circumstances, tell us the buyer. And if we think the buyer killed him or could have, that could be important. On the other hand, this cave seems key to me. I just can't see sending the vicar to the cave. Although, I don't know, maybe his faith makes him not be afraid of the cave. Okay, well, someone's going to that cave. I'm using my, what's the Invisible Man says cave? What's my prerogative as the person here in front of the camera to send to the cave? If he was at bats for the last 6 weeks, why was he bird watching on the other side of the map? I mean, that is the $1 million question. We're fairly certain he wasn't bird watching, that his binoculars were down and he was watching someone else, but we don't know. That's a key mystery. That's like we're figuring out one piece of it, but we don't know what got him to this other side of the map where he was spying on someone. But it's possible. If you had to hypothesize, and we should make our move soon, but if you wanted to come up with a theory, might it be something like this? Rupert Albright, an avid birder, runs out of money. Desperate for money, he realizes, he reads something occurs to him that he might be able to find ancient artifacts using his skills and a heterodyne to find where the bat caves are. He builds one, he tests it, he in fact finds some artifacts, some clay artifacts from the Iron Age. He works with this woman, Catherine, and he sells them. He sells his first batch of artifacts, makes a bunch of money. They have to be sold illegally because it's not legal for him to retrieve artifacts. He sells them. He makes enough money to build a better heterodyne to find more bat caves. And then he stumbles on something he shouldn't have stumbled on in one of the caves. Not artifacts, but some Cold War spying thing, and that gets him in trouble with people that he starts to follow. Maybe he tries to blackmail, maybe they follow him. So that's sort of my working shot in the dark theory. It's about making money from stealing artifacts from sites that he discovers, and then he stumbles onto something else. And Tina says she wants to send someone to the lecture. Remember, there's a lecture on Iron Age stuff. I don't understand why you guys are not more interested in the caves. So there is a lecture, a rare public debate Friday night at the men's club about Iron Age stuff. We could learn a little bit about them hiding it in caves and stuff. Remember, there's this interesting debate about swamplands of the ancient people, and that's where the impure iron deposits are. 8 p.m. in the Raker main dining room. A full transcript will be made available afterwards for the public. So I guess we don't really have to we don't have to worry about missing that because we're going to get a transcript if we miss it live. Kathleen ties to the pottery somehow and the auction. She does. If she's not the Choral Society or involved with the dig, we've got no other leads to find her. I think you've got a good point about... I was thinking like finding Kathleen was our number one priority since she seems to be involved in some illegality. So I was very hot on the idea of going right to the Choral Society. But she could also work at the dig. So I think a case could be made that we shouldn't just take a shot in the dark at the Choral Society until after we go to the dig visitor center, in case that's where she is. And since we want to go to the visitor society eventually anyway, the visitor center. So let's not go to the Choral Society because we might find Kathleen at the visitor center. Invisible Man says, can we find out how much this artifact was? Well, that's the trip to the bank would tell us that, if we wanted to find that out. I mean, my inclination would be to hit the cemetery and the 2 caves. But on the other hand, I can be talked into spreading that out a little bit. Going to 1 cave, someplace else. Do we want to send someone to the cemetery? Doesn't it seem like we could send the vicar to the visitor center? I like that idea. Don't forget, though, that the Squire Stones and the visitor center, is that what happened? Because that's not where he was. Did he stumble upon someone else stealing artifacts? Are there multiple people stealing artifacts, and did he stumble onto one of them? So my question is, do we want to send someone to the cemetery where he was actually walking about? Or do we not think his bats are going to be very useful there? All right, what if we send the vicar to the visitor center, since there are a couple people that want to go there, and we send one of them to this cave here that is more appealing, that seems more tempting to me. Although, remember, this thing is about Iron Age and Swamplands. I wonder if that's not... So, Vicar to Visitor Center. So, Cecily or Imogen to the cave. And then the other one, either to the bank or to the other cave. Let's hear what the audience wants. Who, if you haven't gotten your suggestion in a previous turn, then speak up and say, this is where we should go, and I haven't gotten my choice yet. Okay, Emmy says, if we're going to go to a cave, let's send Wooster. All right. Well, in that case, Imogen is the good bank person, but I guess and maybe Cecily could handle the bank as well. All right, we're going to send the vicar to the Dig Visitor Center where he can do the least harm. Then the question is, do we go to the 2 caves, or do we go to 1 cave and 1 cemetery? Cemetery, cave, bank. The bank could yield no useful information, or it could yield good information about the purchaser who could be involved in his death somehow. Cemetery, cave 1, cave 2, bank. We got 4 places. Matt says just 1 cave for now. Okay, done. We're going to go to 1 cave. I'm going to say we go to this cave here, the smaller cave. Now, we can go to the second cave afterwards. So, now, last up is cemetery versus bank. Cecily's strength is questioning people. Shall we send her to the bank? Is the bank out of town where she is? Because if that's the case, it would make sense that thematically she would do that, since she's already in Wickenford. Where is our bank? The bank is in Netherwellow, which is near... The bank is in Netherwellow, which is near Wickenford. Wickenford's out here, but the vicar's there too. Would we better off sending Cecily to the visitor center and the vicar to the bank? Feels like the vicar can do the least harm at the visitor center. And we should send, if someone needs to go to the bank, it needs to be someone who can talk the guy into giving us information. So if we're going to go to the bank, we should send Cecily. If we're going to go to the cemetery, maybe Cecily could go there as well. So what do you think? What would you prefer? Cemetery or bank? I kind of like, I tell you what, well, I kind of like the idea of the three of them meeting up here. Matt votes for bank. Well, I'm making the case of the different thing, like just for, everyone says bank. Okay, bank it is. I've been overruled. I was going to say it's kind of fun to have them all meet up here after they've been spread out to have a little chat, but everyone says bank. And Emmy says, I suspect the cemetery will just send us to the stone. Okay, done and done. All right, let's do it here. All right, so Cecily is going to the bank. She's going to try to find out who secretly purchased that pottery and how much was it for. N55 is the bank. Is Albright's bank. He got a money transfer. They're not going to want to tell us who sent the money, but maybe in the 50s they'll reveal it. They'll certainly tell us how much it was for and how much money he had in his bank. That could be another clue. Like if he's got £1,000 in the bank, we know he's up to some no good. All right. And then Imogen and Wooster are going to E38, which has no name. It's a mystery cave. We'll call this cave number 2. This one's going to be number 1, and this one here is number 2. Okay, Imogen and Wooster are going to cave number 2. We're depending on Wooster to sniff something out. And then the vicar is going to the visitor center, which is E36. Visitor center of the dig. All right. Let's put our little spots on the map here. Here's the visitor center. And right next door to the visitor center is the cave number 2. And then the bank is at N55. Which is a small town little bank over here. So there's our bank. And there's our cave. And there's our visitor center. All right, everyone happy? Doesn't matter because that's what we're doing. All right, Cecily, N55. Wait, someone's disagreeing. Let's see. Wouldn't the rich lady have contacts at the bank? I really think that Imogen should be the one going to the bank. I agree, Nicola. She is the rich one. She did handle the bank guy better before. All right. I mean, yes, Imogen's better for the bank, but is Wooster better for clues? I'll tell you what. We're going to talk ourselves into it. We're going to say Wooster might be better for clues, but this rich lady might not want to get her clothes dirty in the cave, whereas Cecily is like nothing's going to stop Cecily. So we're going to switch it up. We're going to send rich Imogen to the bank where she won't take no for an answer. And we'll send Cecily to the cave. She doesn't have Wooster the dog, but she is very determined. She will not be thrown. She will not let the bat cave scare her. So, all right. So Imogen is going to N55, Albright's bank. And Cecily now is going to be the one to go to E E38. The cave. Cave number 2. Everyone happy with that now? All right, now before I do that, I'm just going to read and make sure, like, Cecily's not afraid of the dark or something. So Cecily she's good at understanding human nature, noticing details, and being stubborn. There you go. Okay. So that's a reasonable choice to send her into the cave. She's stubborn, she's good at noticing details, and she's not going to be scared off. The bats are not going to stop her. Whereas Wooster might get freaked out. Look at that little dog. He's not going to be happy going in a cave with bats. He'll get scared maybe. So, and might fear Dracula or something. So, all right, I think we saved ourselves from making a mistake. Now we're all in agreement. Okay, Cecily. E38. Put this over here. Cecily's going to E38. Imogen goes to N55. And the vicar goes to E36, which is the visitor center. Okay. Here we go. There you have it. All right. That took us an hour and 20 minutes. That was a long session, but we're feeling the weight of this game, making efficient decisions. Matt says, side note, a device to lower high frequencies so that people can hear them reminds me of a classic Roald Dahl short story called The Sound Machine, about a guy who discovers that plants make sounds. Yes, he discovers that the plants are talking or something, right? It's not just that they make sounds, it's that there's communication or something. That might be an interesting one. Called The Sound Machine. Okay, maybe something worth checking out. All right, well, I sincerely hope that we get our reply soon enough to be able to play it by next Sunday. I wonder if we move to Saturdays, whether that would speed up the likelihood of the mail. Probably not. So probably Sunday is as good as any time. All right, well, I'll see you next Sunday at 3 p.m. Unless it doesn't arrive, then we'll go to the Sunday after. I am open to the idea, if you could find something else for us to play for an hour-long block on Sundays at 3 p.m. when the mail doesn't arrive in time, or we could just sit and chat. All right, thanks for joining me. Give this a thumbs up if you want to see more content like this, or leave a comment if you're watching this not live after the fact. Make your suggestion of where you thought we should have gone that we didn't go. And I'll see you next time.